may not know me, I'm Francis X. Gallagher. I'm the publisher and CEO of FX Express Publications, and we're really excited with our plan today with Etihad Airways. Vincent Frascogna is the Vice President of the Americas, and again, thank you, Vincent, for being here.
Thank you, Frank. No, it's wonderful to be able to take opportunities like this to speak to your audience. You know, we've been an avid follower of your publications for a long time, obviously taking part and winning some of the relevant awards from your publications as well. So it's a great opportunity to speak about, not just about where we're going, but also where we've been over the last 4 months as well, what we've been doing as an organization, how we're reacting to the current issues, the pandemic, and ultimately what we see as the future, whatever that may be.
Yeah, we were chatting a little bit about that earlier, but let me just get a little background for those of you who are not 100% familiar with our brand. So Global Traveler is now into its 17th year of publishing. This year we have 10 issues that we'll publish, and in 2021 we plan to do the same. And the target, of course, for the magazine is the entrepreneurial business luxury traveler. We also have Trazi Travel for the millennial travel segment, and that's a digital platform, globaltravelusa.com, which has daily content. And then Wherever Family, which is for the intrepid family traveler. And then, of course, we added FX Excursions, which would be great for Etiod, because we talk about itineraries for travel and all the different things you can do, because sometimes people are looking for suggestions on where to travel and what to do. But as I said earlier, you know, I'm a big fan of Etihad Airways. We flew over there with one of our advisory board members, Wayne Tallman. I think it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And we toured the flight attendant facility, the training, the pilot simulators. It was a whole tour of the Etihad operations, which was phenomenal, including the cuisine and how everything is set up with that. So that was really good. Also for the audience, if you're not 100% sure about where Etihad is located, they're in Abu Dhabi as a headquarters, which is the capital of the UAE, United Arab Emirates. The beauty of that is that you can go to Abu Dhabi and you can go quickly to Dubai, which I always do. I hop on a very speedy limo, right?
That's correct.
And you get to Dubai very quickly, so you can really cover both ends, which I think is terrific. But of course, Etihad is a great connector throughout the world. It's really a true global airline. Now, Vincent, of course, as a veteran yourself of the airline industry, and I mean that politely.
Thank you.
I know you spent some time at many different airlines, but you've been with Etihad for 11 years, so you must have an incredible insight. So what have you been doing at Etihad? Let's say the past, what is it 6 months now that we're into this?
Yeah, so past 6 months. You're right, 11 years at Etihad, 20 years in the industry. I've been very fortunate enough with Etihad to have spent a vast number of years with the company in Abu Dhabi as well. So I was based there for just over 5 years, nearly 6 years. Doing a range of commercial roles, and then I've been able to work in Australia and now the US with the organization as well. As you mentioned, it is the national airline of the UAE. We are based out of our home in Abu Dhabi, and we're very fortunate to have a destination like Abu Dhabi that we can work hand in hand with on things like tourism, on trade strategies, looking at how we work together to improve relationships between the countries that we operate to as well. I think when we look at the journey we've been on as an airline, we started operations in 2003, so we're a pretty young airline when you look at full service carriers. But we have been on a journey since then. We've had exponential growth towards the late 2009s, 2010s into 2011, 12. Then we've taken some time over the last 2, 3, 4 years to actually revisit our business, look at our model going forward, understand what are the destinations that make sense to fly to, realign our network, and of course our fleet to the network. And as such, I think when we hit this pandemic, we were already kind of in a fit position And I know that may sound a little bit strange, but it's almost like we've been in the gym for the last 2 years, making the relevant changes that we needed to make to be a fitter organization, a fitter airline. So I don't think it's hit us as hard as most global full service carriers, because we'd already made a lot of changes to our business. However, like most airlines, towards the end of March, we had to stop flying.
Right.
Our entire fleet was grounded from a passenger perspective. The regulations across the globe, including those of the UAE, meant that we couldn't fly passengers into or out of the country. So we had to turn our attention immediately to two things. One was cargo flying, and the second was repatriation flying. So the cargo flying, has actually been a boom in cargo flying over the past 6 months. We have substituted some of our passenger aircraft for either mixed use, passenger and cargo, or specifically for cargo flying as well, to complement the existing cargo operations, the cargo freighter operations that we have going into different markets. It's actually presented opportunities on the cargo side to fly into new destinations. So we already have a regular freighter service from the UAE into Chicago, and then a very robust road transportation service out of Chicago to the rest of the US. But we've been operating into other parts of the US, Cuba, Costa Rica, Colombia, and then outside of the Americas, operating first cargo services from the UAE into Israel as well, into Tel Aviv. And a lot of that was medical supplies going in to support different countries with their pandemic efforts and their control efforts during the pandemic. But then again, I mentioned that we've actually had some mixed flying. So having our passenger aircraft with passengers, but also with cargo on board as well. And it's taken some time to get back to some semblance of any normality when we talk about network flying. Of course, we are solely reliant on governments opening borders and easing restrictions, entry restrictions for different passenger types. We look at our North American market out of the US and Canada. Our core destinations, of course, primarily the UAE, the rest of the Middle East, but then a big reliance on India and Pakistan. Right. And if you look at our top 20 destinations, the core of that will be to India. And with the current restrictions on India entry requirements, it limits our ability to establish demand or relevant demand in this market. So we have been flying out of our main airports, our main gateways in North America. As of this week, we were flying 5 days a week out of JFK, the same out of Chicago, 3 times a week out of Washington, and 5 times a week out of Toronto. The only gateway that we haven't yet restarted is LA. And that's primarily because we don't see enough demand to warrant putting this back on at this stage. We're constantly reviewing the network. Meetings are taking place every day to understand when we can reopen, what aircraft type we should be operating. Our network planning team are working hand in hand with the sales team globally to understand, again, where can we fly? What's the right time to put on different types of aircraft? And as it stands, what we are operating is a 787-9 out of all of our North American routes, which of course is a smaller aircraft than we would normally operate, with the 380s out of JFK and the 777s into the rest of the network. But look, I'm quietly confident that there is a pent-up demand still there. You know, whether you look across the spectrum of our customer segments. On the corporate side, we keep in contact with a lot of our contracted corporations, with our TMC partners to understand what they're seeing, what they're expecting. We've even had some conversations with corporates where primarily they had an economy policy. They're now looking to say, okay, what deals can you give me to upgrade my policy into a premium cabin for my staff? Because I see that by virtue of the way your seats, your configuration are on board, I get social distancing for my staff, but I want to see what deals you can come to the table with. So we're having those sorts of discussions right now, so that ultimately when borders open, we're nimble, we're flexible, and we can get things up and running with a minimum amount of fuss and time as well.
Right. Very good. Very good. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the pent up demand, and I've traveled domestically. I know a lot of our participants have traveled domestically, not a whole lot internationally, but they all have indicated that they want to get out there and travel. But Vincent, one of the things that is on everybody's mind, whether they have a certain concern or maybe very little concern, is the safety of travel. When I say safety, it's the COVID situation.
Yeah.
So I would like maybe you can address what Etihad Airways has been doing to deal with COVID, or what you plan to do as far as onboard and flights and so forth for passengers.
It's a really interesting subject because safety, whether you're in a pandemic or not, safety is always the number one priority of any airline. It's there, and actually, when most people think about safety, they think about operational safety or
Right.
technical safety or the safety of the actual aircraft itself. For us, it's always been, of course, all of the above, plus having a very hygienic, sanitized environment for passengers to be in. We spoke a little bit before this call about communication, and some organizations have done a really good job. Others are doing a better job coming forward. And I'm sure, like most people, we've all received communications to say, we're the cleanest, we're the most sanitized, we're the healthiest hotel, airline, transportation company, whatever it is. So we've taken a little bit of time to understand, what do our consumers expect from us as a company and us as an airline? And they expect an authentic approach to everything that we do. So when we look at the cleanliness and sanitization of our aircraft and the safety aspects, of course, that is very important. But actually, it's taking a step back and saying, how do we protect the wellness of our individual passengers and actually make them feel like an individual that is being looked after, rather than just a broad spectrum of initiatives and protocols that we implement. So
How do you make them feel like they're not, sealed, contained, and pushed away? And you do feel that way now a little bit.
You do,
Yeah.
and I think it's normal, and it's difficult to try and move away from that. But what we have done, and you mentioned just now about, how are we communicating with people? How are we putting people's minds at ease? So right from the beginning, even before you make a booking, we have a dedicated, specially trained team of people based in Abu Dhabi, available 24/7, who are part of our wellness ambassador program. They are multilingual, speaking a variety of different languages. They're available by web chat, telephone, email, and they are there to take you as a passenger or our trade partners through all of the protocols that we have in place, and really take each person step by step of what they can expect when flying with us, whether it's in the limo, as you mentioned,
Right.
whether it's at the airport in Abu Dhabi, whether it's in our lounges, whether it's on board the aircraft or on arrival as well as talk about what options there are if the flight is cancelled in terms of flexibility. Of course, and I'll come on to it later, the new insurance that we now have, a COVID-19 insurance for all passengers traveling between now and the end of the year. And they are there again to create that authentic approach, but create peace of mind for the traveling community. Then on top of that, we work very closely with our airport colleagues around the world, but specifically in Abu Dhabi, our home airport, our hub, where whether it is at check-in, whether it's at immigration, customs, any security points, you feel like there is a very joined up approach between airline and airport. And you'll see that the general things that you would expect: plexiglass up in front of check-in desks, social distancing markers on the floors, sanitization stations across the airport. But even then, when you actually get on board our aircraft, you will be greeted by one of our wellness ambassadors. So this is one of our existing crew complement, who again has been taken offline, specially trained on all of the protocols that we've implemented on board. And he or she is on board there, not just for our guests, but also as a main point of contact for the rest of our crew as well. So in terms of the cleanliness procedures on board, the cleaning schedule on board, ensuring if there are social distancing measures that we've implemented on board a specific aircraft, that they are making sure that that stays implemented during the flight. And also we have a quarantined area at the rear of the aircraft set up in the unlikely event that somebody feels unwell on board, that we actually have those protocol measures and a specific quarantine area to move them to as well.
Interesting.
So there's a lot going on in terms of start to finish, in terms of what the passenger and the consumer sees. But it's also about behind the scenes. It's about our catering facilities and what we're doing there. We have big catering facilities in Abu Dhabi, food hygiene testing facilities that all have new protocols and enhanced protocols introduced as well. But you end up as an organization coming into this sort of period of compromise as well. So we've had such a focus on sustainability over the last 2-3 years. Last year, we operated our first flight, which was free of single-use plastics. An amazing achievement, and something which ultimately we want to get to as a sustainable process in the future. But what happens when we come into a period of hygiene and sanitation? We end up putting more plastics on board.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
we don't want to necessarily remove aspects of our premium service that our customers expect, whether it's duvets, pillows, blankets. So what do? We need to ensure that everything is fully sanitized and make sure that that passenger knows that that is the first time that plastic is opened is the first time they're using that. So again, it's taking it one step further and saying, what is the type of plastic that we're now using, and reinvesting funds into saying we need a plastic that is a lot more biodegradable, and reinvesting funds back into our sustainability program to counterbalance what we've had to do during the pandemic as well.
There's some plastics now that are made only from ocean floating plastics that they've reclaimed, which is kind of a neat idea.
Correct.
Yeah, you mentioned the limo, and I like the limo, but I do like the fact that when you land in Abu Dhabi, you never touch your luggage. If you're in your first or business class, they come, they transfer it, and out the door you are, and you're in your hotel very quickly. So that's always great.
And there's some of the things, obviously, that I mentioned at the beginning, that in a way we've set ourselves up in a good way to deal with the pandemic.
Right.
Limited touch, limited interaction. And of course, I touched on the COVID-19 insurance that we've now launched in partnership with AXA. That's been live since September 7th, runs through to the end of this year. Passengers, agencies don't really need to do anything. It's all part and parcel of the booking process. And there are specific coverage policies there for consumers when they're flying with us, if they contract COVID and have to quarantine while they're traveling with us. So all of that information, and a lot of what I'm talking about today, is available via Etihad.com. And again, it's a unique offering in the market right now. There are very few airlines offering such insurance coverage as part of the booking process.
Great idea. Excellent. Makes people feel more at ease. Now, Vincent, what about the future plans? You talked a little bit about your schedules as they are now based on what's happening, but what are your future plans in North America? I know that some of our participants had some questions about specific gateways, but we can get to those. But if you have an overall idea of coming out of this and what your plans for North America will look like, that would be great for our people to hear.
Yeah, look, I have no doubt that we will come out of this with a very similar footprint than as we had before we went into the pandemic. So looking at JFK, Chicago, Washington, LA primarily, we still have good partnerships on an interline basis with the likes of American and JetBlue, and also code share with JetBlue as well, which then gives us that opportunity from secondary cities or other main points in the US to transfer over the gateways that we serve. Right. Unfortunately, as of next week, we are going to have to reduce frequencies again because of some changes with the India border. So we are going to be reducing JFK down by probably a daily service next week. The same with Washington. And it's like I said, we need to remain flexible and fluid in the short term when it comes to our network. But I don't see any major changes one way or another, either increase or decrease to how we were pre-pandemic as we come out of this. And again, when we look at our core destinations, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, core destinations, Indian subcontinent covering a vast array of destinations across the continent in India, as well as Pakistan. And then looking at, again, Saudi is big on the map right now with a lot of the investment that Saudi is doing in their own country right now. It's promoting a lot of inward investment into the country, which again, we're seeing a lot of relationships between the US and Saudi either re-established or established, which pre-pandemic, we were seeing definitely a growth in the Saudi market as well.
Right. I think I flew a flight of yours from Abu Dhabi to Seoul. Does that sound right?
Yes, that would be right as well.
Yeah, that was when I went around the world.
Yeah, there you go.
That was a great flight.
Look, at the end of the day, Fran, for most people, it wouldn't be a logical route to take to East Asia over Abu Dhabi. But if you want to do it in comfort, if you want to do it in style, and pre-pandemic, we were offering free stopovers in Abu Dhabi for all passengers as well. So for first and business class, we were offering 2 nights free in either direction, 1 night free for economy guests, which gives people the opportunity to break the journey up going to places like Korea, China, Singapore, and potentially experience a new destination in the UAE.
Right. And there's also those people that will do business in Abu Dhabi, and instead of going back home and adding on Asia, why not do it all in 2 weeks or 10 days and really preserve some of your at-home time? So that was kind of what I was doing.
Yep.
How do you feel the future of travel will look like? And of course, you mentioned this, Etihad will be ready, but the question is, will you be ready to take advantage as things quickly open back up, as we all think they will do eventually?
Yeah, look, there is a propensity and a normalcy to travel. That's what this world does now. We see year on year a capacity increase, but capacity increasing based on demand that is there. From a leisure perspective, people, especially in this country, are becoming a lot more adventurous in terms of going out and visiting new places that they may not have visited before. There are new opportunities in terms of new destinations. We talk about, and I'm sure we'll come on to this later, in terms of the Abraham Accord, the peace deal that was just signed between the UAE and Israel. Wow, what an amazing opportunity for the future to actually connect the UAE, the US, and Israel as 3 points to visit 2 very unique destinations as well, both from a leisure perspective and from a business perspective as well. But when we look at what does travel look like, I was on a panel discussion last month, and one of my co-panelists was a gentleman who headed up an airport architectural firm. And he'd been in the business for quite a long time. He was around during 9/11 as well. And he described coming out of 9/11 for his industry as the theater of security. The fact that a lot of changes were made to airport processes at that time, whether it was liquids, whether it was X-ray machines, the introduction of TSA, and ultimately that became normal processes, normal business. And he said, ultimately, we're going to be in a period of the theater of cleanliness and the theater of hygiene during this situation. So recently, the UAE introduced a requirement for all guests, whether you're traveling direct to Abu Dhabi or Dubai or transiting, to present a negative PCR test prior to boarding the aircraft. So in some ways, that has added a new process into the customer journey. But we've received a lot of feedback when checking passengers in to say that they actually feel so much more comfortable flying with us now that they know everybody on the aircraft has presented a negative PCR test, and they potentially are, enjoying a 15-hour flight in the knowledge of that situation. I think when we look at travel going forward, my personal opinion is that we will end up looking at what does airport rapid testing look like, and while that may be something new to introduce, based on that gentleman's view from the theater of security going into what became normal process, potentially that's where we will end up. And I think even now, if we're to stimulate demand and travel and encourage travel in an authentic, safe, and secure way, then airport rapid testing is really where we need to get to, particularly out of this market.
Yeah, even if you travel domestically, if it could be something where you show up at the airport, we talked about this, and It wouldn't take. Supposedly, the new test only takes like a few minutes to get the results. So once they get
Correct.
that nailed down, I think that would make everyone feel a lot comfortable. You know, I watched a great video that you had put together during the pandemic. It was about what you were doing to your aircraft while they were grounded. And instead of just leaving them mothballed, you were cleaning them, you were changing upholstery, you were, doing some maybe moving some maintenance schedules ahead. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And
Yeah, of
I'd be
course.
happy to share that link with our participants afterwards.
Yeah, Fran, and you've nailed it there. So with all of our aircraft on the ground, what do you do with them? You don't just leave them there to sit and wait for the next border to open. We embarked on probably the biggest maintenance program that we've ever done as an airline. I think an airline of our size has probably ever done in one go as well. So we looked at some of the smaller maintenance tasks, whether it was repairs of IFE, lighting fixtures, things like that, everything fixed on board. We brought heavy maintenance programs forward so that when our network really restarts, that we don't have to take aircraft off based on the future plan for maintenance.
Right.
But we removed every single piece of soft furnishing, whether it was seat back covers, carpets, any other coverings such as those. Replaced everything. I mean, we have a relatively young fleet based on our age. The average age of the fleet is around 6 years, 5.5 to 6 years. But even so, when guests return on us and they're flying on us now, it feels like you're getting on a brand new aircraft again. So, like I said at the beginning, we are a very thoughtful airline. We are very nimble in our approach, and we are able to make decisions quickly. And one of the decisions our leadership team made, especially on the maintenance and technical side, was to make full use of the downtime while the aircraft were on the ground.
That's great. That was great. Excellent. And as I mentioned to you previously, we were communicating all through this, and it was great to be able to speak to someone and kind of have a heart to heart about what was going on. And you guys are always open to discuss, so I think that's a good sign as well. We have some questions that were pre-assigned during the sign up, and we can go through some of those. The first one I have is from Vern Alg from New York, and Vern asks, will Etiod continue the hub and spoke business plan or shift to more point-to-point after the pandemic? Now, of course, there's certain rules and regulations, right, about where you can fly,
Sure.
that you have to hit your home market and so forth.
Of course. Yep.
But how would you address that?
So look, our home market is our bread and butter, right? It is our core destination. We are Abu Dhabi, and Abu Dhabi is Etihad. We go hand in hand. And as you know, Fran, and many of your viewers today will know, the destination of Abu Dhabi presents so many opportunities, not just from a leisure perspective, but some amazing that would rival places like the Maldives, for example, as well as a very, very good destination for trade, commerce. But that's just part of our network. We are a hub and spoke airline. Abu Dhabi is one stop to most places going eastbound from North America. And as I've said, even passengers that are willing to take that extra time to travel in comfort, to travel with an airline like Etihad, and also visit Abu Dhabi on the way. The Far East, destinations like China, Singapore, Japan, Korea make absolute sense from the US as well, even with that additional travel time. So we won't be changing from a hub and spoke to just point to point. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, the UAE are core destinations that form a massive part of our strategy, but so do the destinations onward into the Indian subcontinent, the Far East.
John Warwick from Los Angeles asks, in what classes of service and with the proposed COVID-19 limitations, will you restart flights to the US? You have flights to the US, but I think he's talking about some sort of normalcy for passengers.
Yeah, so right now we're only operating 2-cabin aircraft into the US. So it's just economy and business. Ordinarily, we would have economy, business, and first into Washington and LA. And we would also have the A380 with the residents on board as well. So Just as a reminder, the Residence is the only 3-room cabin on board a commercial airliner with double bedroom, shower room, and a private living area as well. As of now, as I said, we're operating economy and business class. That fits the demand model that we see for the short term. As soon as we see that change, I'm sure that our network planning guys will be on top of me to say, we're ready to put 3 cabin aircraft back into your market. Yeah.
Good. Tom Linhard from Denver, he asked a good question. Do you service the Maldives? Have you been to the Maldives, and what do travelers expect when they're there?
Yes. And the Maldives, I believe right now, and I would encourage people to double check this, but I also believe there's a PCR requirement for anyone traveling into the Maldives as well. Mm-hmm. So it actually works quite nicely that there is already a PCR test requirement to fly on Etihad, but also if you're flying to the Maldives, actually to enter the country, to enter the islands, you present a negative PCR test as well. And yeah, we do connect via the UAE on some of the weeks, not every, from the US on certain days of the week. And, I encourage everybody to double check that schedule on Etiod.
Yoram El Grabi from Houston, Texas asks, will Etiod start flying to Israel? What are the projected dates? Great question.
Great question. And I'm so excited by this. And, it's so timely. You saw yesterday with the official signing of the Abraham Accords at the White House, with the UAE's foreign minister, His Highness there, representing the UAE. So a fantastic achievement, and hopefully the catalyst for many more such agreements. And you saw Bahrain has already taken the next step as well. And let's hope that we see a greater expansion of that. So yes, there are some steps that now the governments need to follow. So now it is with a government to government level in terms of understanding and negotiating the bilaterals, setting up embassies in both these. Mm-hmm. And then once those bilaterals are agreed, I'm sure that that Etihad will have a vested interest in getting operations up and running.
It's probably the greatest announcement that's been made. It's a great step toward real peace. That's my feeling.
And at a time, the last 4 months, we've had a lot of negativity out there in the world. To see glimmers of hope like this make all the difference. So I'm very proud to be associated with an airline that is associated with a country that is as forward thinking as the UAE is. And actually wants to take a step forward and be a beacon of light within the region as well. And it's just one of a number of initiatives that the UAE has embarked upon over the last couple of years. I mean, we had the Special Olympics for the first time in a Middle Eastern country last year, an amazing event, an event that brought together more countries than ever for a Special Olympics event in Abu Dhabi. And then the first visit of the Pope, the Catholic Pope, visiting Abu Dhabi again last year as well. So this is what Abu Dhabi, this is what the UAE does. And it's not surprising that they are first to the mark in terms of this latest peace agreement.
And then when I went to Israel a few years ago, we went to Jordan, but I think travelers do want to travel with more ease, throughout the region. I think it makes a great.
Fran, look at those opportunities now, for especially whether it's business or tourism, leisure. To be able to do Beirut, Jordan, Cairo, and Israel all in one go now. It's, you get all of that area and the flexibility to be able to travel with Etihad via Abu Dhabi to a lot of those destinations.
Very good. Mohammed Yazdash from Toronto, he wants to know about expansions in Western Canada.
So right now, no, we are bilaterally constrained when it comes to flying into Canada. We have maxed out in terms of the number of services that we can fly in. So we can operate up to 5 days a week into Toronto. At the moment, it will be down to 3 days a week as of next week. But the UAE and Canadian governments continue dialogue to see is there opportunity to expand the bilaterals,
Right.
thereby giving us the opportunity to put more services into Canada. We would if we could, I'll tell you that. But while we are in the position we're in, we have very good relationships with Air Canada and WestJet from a code share and interline perspective, which enables our passengers to connect via Toronto out to the rest of the country.
Vincent, do you have anything to add before we wrap things up?
I think, look, the core thing here is I know we've got a whole array, a whole cross section of people viewing today, and of course your normal readership and viewership. This is not unique to airlines, what we're going through. This is a global issue, but when it comes to the travel industry, it's hotels, it's car rental, it's airlines, it is transportation. We're all going through the same issues. So we've got to come at this together. And the more that we can collaborate and work together on how to come out of the theater of hygiene and become, have normal processes and a bit of normalcy coming out of this, we have to do this together. But ultimately, the key message I want to leave you with is we're ready, right? We're ready in terms of our aircraft quality, our operation, the safety, the things we've implemented in terms of our wellness program, our COVID insurance, so that when the network can return to some sort of fuller operation, we're ready to go for it.